Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. It's your boy D Black coming back with another SmackDown review. All right, SmackDown tonight. Mm-mm-mm. I wasn't too entertained about it. I mean, there were some segments that might have been that were okay, but I mean, for the most part, it wasn't a good show. I'm not even sure what direction that any of this is going to and stuff, especially with Cody and Gunther. I mean, I'm not understanding that. Gunther come from Raw and attacks Cody for what? Okay, but we'll get to that, as we do this, and we're going to take it, segment and match. Alrighty. Okay, so we get Cody Rhodes that comes out, saying that he's, got info for everybody, for those who don't know, that he talked to Nick Aldis and doctors and everything about his eye and stuff, and he just wanted to know if he was cleared or not. And then he gets report from Nick Aldis saying that he's clear. So, he's saying that, he can get into action. He can start doing things now in the match. And then he just goes and says, he wonders, what's next for him. And then out comes Ricky Saints. And we all know Ricky Saints, from NXT and everything, if you know him, Ricky Starks from AEW. So it's the same guy, and he's here. And he comes out, doesn't really say a lot. I mean, he says a lot, but a lot doesn't really make sense. I mean, because he's just coming from NXT and already gets this kind of match. I think the match should have probably been, for the title because how they, went at each other as far as, words and stuff like that. And I think when the challenge was made, it should have been a challenge, for the undisputed title. And we know Cody wasn't going to lose it and stuff like that. But it gives more to Ricky Saints coming up from NXT, having this challenge, with Cody Rhodes, Ricky Saints, is telling the crowd, the fans, about booing him and stuff like that, saying that he's the hottest thing, the rich, guy and stuff like that, you know, and that he's here, to do things and stuff, Then he tells Cody, that Cody, can feel a change, because he's the revolution. He leads the revolution. He's the only one that knows about the revolution that is coming. And then he tells Cody that this is Friday Night Saints and stuff. And so, they go on, back and forth with each other and like that, and then Cody, then Ricky Saints tell Cody that, his main purpose here is to relieve Cody from the from his title and everything. And then Cody, gets upset and everything and say, "Yeah, you want a challenge, you want this match, you want to try and da 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 da," basically to show himself and everything. So he issues a challenge for him for later on, in the show. And Ricky says to Cody that he's not here to make a statement, that he's here to show who the show is all about, you know, and about himself as far as Ricky Saints is concerned. He's going to do kind of like what he did and said when he came into NXT that it's a revolution, it's about him, and all that other crazy stuff. And Cody tells him, Cody says, like he said, everybody, to everybody last week, he's easy to find and hard to beat. So now we get this match, set up for later on in the evening. And then you got Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair. They're talking with Kathy Kelly and stuff, and she's asking them, are they worried about the numbers from Fatal Influence, because Fatal Influence took out everybody last week. They showed up and showed out and stuff. And then as that question was asked in Rhea Ripley, she comes out. We all know that Rhea Ripley and um, Alexa Bliss and Charlotte, they were, just wrestling against each other a few weeks ago, for the tag titles. And now that Rhea has the belt, why is she doing this? Why she isn't on the show, trying to do something to defend that belt or see if there's who's going to be challenging her for the belt. And I'm hoping that Triple H doesn't ruin her championship like he did before when she was champion. Hopefully they got something going on because her getting involved with Charlotte and Alexa is just crazy. And then Charlotte, she's not really comfortable about that happening. Alexa says it's a good idea and stuff, and I guess Charlotte walked out because she has a match with Jayce Jane and stuff. And then as they introduce, and then as Jayce Jane comes out, she's saying that they're going to find out why they're there, and then they're going to that she's going to take out Charlotte, and then she's going to go along and she's going to take out all the legends, because Fatal Influence. I mean, they dog walked everybody last week, you know, and so they get the match going and stuff like that. I guess it was a pretty halfway decent match. I mean, there was a few things that were kind of missed as far as spots is concerned and stuff like that. But eventually, that Fatal Influence is going to get involved. Fallon pulls Charlotte's arms and everything when she has Jayce Jane in the figure eight. And then Alexa comes around and she nails, Fallon. And then Laney, she nails Alexa Bliss. And then Jesse James hits Charlotte with the rolling encore, and she pins Charlotte. So that's crazy that she did defeat Charlotte. You know, I mean, I guess you got to put that shine on the new people that are coming and stuff. So I guess we'll see what happens as far as Fatal Influence and what's going to happen with them and excuse me, this thing with Charlotte and all them and stuff. And then we get this backstage thing with R-Truth and Damian Priest. And then Axiom is involved also. And apparently they get a match. Well, Damian Priest offers them a match, after talking to R-Truth. And R-Truth thinks that, Axiom is Dos Americanos, which they're not, which kind of makes everything kind of a little bit funny on how the things go. And then how he messed, how R-Truth messed with Damian Priest, head and stuff like that. So Damian issues the challenge to Axiom for the tag team titles and stuff like that, later on in the show. And then we get, this little thing with The Miz and Kit Wilson talking about how they were going to, get Danhausen. So I guess they were setting up, this briefcase and stuff, it was full of money, and then it had like a trigger, that would release some type of powder or paint or whatever and stuff. And so Danhausen, he comes, he opens up the case, he sees that there's money in there, and he takes it out, and then Miz like, he's got my $40,000. I mean, that was kind of funny. It's kind of stupid, but it was kind of funny, And then him and Kit, stand in front of the case, and then the case goes off and it sprays in with all that yellow paint stuff and everything. Then we get the match with R-Truth and Damian Priest against Axiom. I mean, the match is pretty good, dealing with Axiom and stuff like that. I mean, it's going to be a fast paced match and stuff. So it was pretty good. They did their thing. R-Truth, and Damian, they stood their ground. Truth took a lot of the heat in the match and stuff like that. At one point, I thought Axiom was going to win this match, but they didn't. You know, Damian Priest comes in, he catches Nathan Frazier, and he takes him from South of Heaven. I mean, yeah, South of Heaven, and pins him, and then that's the win and stuff like that. And then as the match is over, then you have Tyler Tonga come in there, and they took out both teams. They took out the he took out the World Tag Team Champions and Axiom and stuff. So that's that's crazy. So, but anyway, then comes in and he says that Jacob Fatu made the big mistake of taking out the MFTs, because he took them out last week, and saying that Jacob is taking out family members and stuff like that, and that he's making a bad name for the family, and he's doing all these crazy things. And telling Jacob when he arrives to the arena tonight, he tells him that when he gets there, he's a dead man walking. And then out comes the Usos, and the Usos come out. Excuse me. And Jay is basically saying to Solo that they both have issues, as far as Jacob is concerned. But Roman Reigns should get a first shot at him and stuff. And the reason for that is because Jacob Fatu um, grabbed Roman Monday into the Samoan Deathlock, and then Jay is saying that that move was handed down from generations to generations and everything, and that's a last resort kind of hold on anybody, and he did it to Roman Reigns. So Roman Reigns should be the one to take care of Jacob Fatu for that. And then Solo says, and then Jay tells Solo whatever plans that he has, you got to put them on hold, until Roman Reigns, is done with him, and then he goes yeet, and then Solo laughs a little bit. And he says there's plenty of Jacob to go around for both of them and stuff. And then Jace tells Solo that, they're not asking him, that they're telling him. So I guess that kind of gets up under Solo, and Solo starts laughing again with that whole crazy laugh. And he said that he doesn't have the time, to be dealing with them um, about what's going on and stuff. And he tells Tomatunga, like, let's go. And so as they're leaving, then Solo kind of looks back and gives kind of like a nod, and Talatunga takes out the Usos. he destroys them, and then Solo tells them, then Solo tells him, to tell Roman Reigns that he's not his tribal chief, and what he says, he doesn't give a damn. He says whether or not Roman likes it, Jake was a dead man walking. So we'll see what happens later on. Then we get this match, with Royce Keys against Angel. Um, man, so and you know what happened there. Royce Keys destroys Angel and he wins. Then we get a little thing with Tiffany Stratton and Kathy Kelly, and she's talking about her her title and everything and stuff like that. That she's going to be a fighting champion, that she's going to put everything up, and issue challenges and stuff like that. And then Chelsea Green comes and she said that she's, clear, her ankle's fine, that, that was Tiffany's birthday present for her and stuff. And then she said that, she wants to have a match, for the women's US title. And then you get Kiana James and Julia to come out and stuff, and then they're talking about about the title and stuff like that, and then Tiffany offers a match to Kiana James. She tells her, next week I want you. So the match is set for a U.S. title match for them next week and stuff, and then Royce Keys and Jacob Fatu, backstage and everything, and then they start talking about reminiscing about themselves and everything. And Royce Keys is telling him that he's known Jacob for 15 years and stuff like that, and the things that they did, riding up and down the street, to arenas and stuff like that, making things work and stuff like that. And then Royce Keys tells him that, you know, he wants Jacob to be the Samoan werewolf that he knows that he can be, to take care of business and do what he has to do to achieve, what he wants. And then as they're talking, then here comes Solo and Tonga again, and they wipe out both. Royce Keys and Jacob Fatu. And then we get this segment with Sami Zayn, and he brings out the gingerbread man. I mean, it's not a real person inside the suit, but he brings him out, puts him in the ring, and it's weird because he started talking about Bob Dylan and stuff, you know, and then he starts talking about reactions and stuff like that. And he's talking about the fans and stuff and how the fans turned on him and stuff like that and what he's done and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, Sammy looks at the gingerbread man, kind of like he was going to do something to it. And then all of a sudden, Sammy just attacks the gingerbread man and stuff, and he beats him up and stuff, pulls his arm off and everything. And then Trick Williams comes out, and then he beats down Sammy and everything. And then he, gets the gingerbread man. He holds him up and stuff, and then he takes him to medical and everything. And then while that's happening in the ring, then you got Byron um, with Lash Legend and Nia Jax, and they're talking about the matches they're gonna have with Paige and Brie for the women's tag team championship and stuff like that. But then we go back to Trick Williams. He's pretty pissed off and mad because what Sammy did with the with the gingerbread man. He's saying that Sammy took out the gingerbread man and Lil Yachty, and then tells Sammy that, he mentioned something about Lash Legend and everything. We won't repeat what he said and everything, but then he tells Sami Zayn that, at Backlash, he's gonna whoop that trick and stuff. So that segment was pretty cool because I like the fact that when Trick, was all mad, the doctor came out and he asked the doctor how was the gingerbread man. The doctor said it was not a good thing for the gingerbread man, so the gingerbread man has been passed on and stuff. And so that's when Trick went, into his action. And he told Sami Zayn that he's gonna at Backlash that he's gonna whip that trick. So there's a challenge right there and stuff. And then we get Paige and Brie Bella going against Nia Jax and Lash Legend. The match was okay. Wasn't too bad and stuff like that. It came to the point that where um, Nia was going to climb on the ropes to do her little splash and everything, and Paige kicks her down off the ropes and stuff, and then Brie just grabs her by the legs and just rolls her up and stuff. So, and Paige and Brie win that match. Then we get something that I thought was pretty crazy. You get a thing where it says, an obituary for the gingerbread man. It says, R.I.P. And then next week, they're gonna have a funeral service for the gingerbread man. See, this is why I said, man, it's just a lot of stuff that's being wasted and stuff. I mean, it's kind of funny, but it's not funny. I mean, it has nothing to do with anything as far as wrestling is concerned. And then Sammy is asking Nick Aldis, you know, about having a match with Trick Williams, and then at Backlash, and then Nick Aldis says yes, they're going to have the match because Trick Williams had already said that he wants to fight, Sami Zayn, at Backlash for the title and stuff. And then Danhausen comes and he starts complaining about with the Miz and Kit Wilson did to him, and he wants a match, against him. And then Nick tells him, if he can find a partner and everything, he can have the match with Miz and Kit Wilson, at Backlash. And then we have Jimmy J. Uso versus Solo and Talatonga. This match went on and on and on. It was a pretty good rugged match. And then all of a sudden, Talatunga had Jimmy out, started wiping the tables off, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Jacob dives on Talatunga. He attacks him, throws him to the ring post for a couple of times. He gets the stairs and he hits him with the stairs, and then he climbs the stairs with Talatunga, and he puts him through the table. Samoan drops him through the table. And then as he was walking away, he tells the Usos that at Backlash he's gonna dog walk, Roman Reigns. And then he says it's normal thing. He said he's all gas and no brakes and stuff. So hopefully, Backlash will be good. This show, it was it wasn't great and everything. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't really that great. But anyway, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, leave a comment. Let me know how you're feeling. If you agree, or disagree, let me know how you're feeling in the comments and stuff like that. And with that, I say thank you for watching. God bless. Deuces, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you.